It's your will. It's your ability to come to grips with hardship, with pain, with psychological challenges. Life, this is not a test run.
David Bull Gurfein is a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran who enlisted at age 17. After graduating from college, he accepted a commission as a Marine second lieutenant, and over the next decade, he served as a combat infantry officer leading Marines in the jungles of Panama, in the deserts of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, and on the fence line at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
In this video, Bull will tell stories of Marine boot camp, becoming an officer, and serving in Iraq. Later on in this video, we will be talking about the story behind the iconic war photograph, going undercover and playing a Marine in A Few Good Men while Tom Cruise tried to fight him on set.
So what made you decide to join the Marines when you were 17?
When I was, a young kid, that was sort of my role, was to be the defender. I was bigger and stronger than most of the kids in my class and ended up protecting them from a lot of the bullies. So when I was 17, I went down to the recruiter, cut out of high school. Don't tell. And I said, yeah, I'm kind of interested in joining. He's like, you do drugs? I said, no. He goes, you in good shape? I said, yeah, football, wrestling, and lacrosse team. He's like, you going to graduate high school? I said, I think so. So he's like, all right. He goes, well, we can start you with the paperwork right now. I said, wait a second. I said, well, we start diving into this. I'm just curious, how much is this all going to cost? He goes, son, we pay you. I'm like, are you kidding me? You get paid to be a Marine? This is like the best thing ever. I don't think my dad got paid back in World War II. This is awesome. So I was like so fired up. And he was just like, are you sure you don't do drugs? It all sort of worked out. And next thing you know, I was off to boot camp down Parris Island, South Carolina.
And what was boot camp like?
You're starting with 80 people coming from across the country. What's great is that regardless of your background, your wealth, your status, your race, your religion, it doesn't matter. Everybody comes in and becomes equally worthless. You have Marine drill instructors that destroy you, and they beat you down into realizing that you as an individual are meaningless. And it's until you learn that you as a team are the most important and the most powerful entity on this planet will you start getting some respect and pride and eventually graduating. And the class normally starts with about 80, ends with about 50 or so. And what's great is that you get a dyed-in-the-wool white supremacist Klansman coming in from the South with some inner city minority from the north, and the two of these people are just diametrically opposed and literally hate each other, and literally before they graduate they're like drinking out of each other's canteens and they're best friends. And like the thought of something like that anywhere else is unimaginable, but here, with a common mission, a common goal, a common belief that America is great and it's worth raising your right hand and swearing an oath to support our Constitution, it's really incredible to watch that bonding. So for some people, it was overwhelming and they couldn't make it. For me, though, it was sort of a dream come true.
So do people only fail boot camp because they give up, or does anyone fail because they just physically cannot complete a task?
That's a great question. And there's certainly a physical component to boot camp. However, the most physically fit are not necessarily the ones who are going to get through, because at the end of the day, it's all mental. It's your will. It's your ability to come to grips with hardship, with pain, with psychological challenges, and understand drill instructors are training people to deal with the most volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environments in the world where literally people are going to be trying to kill them. And so you've got to be able to control your own emotions. It's the ones who are the most mentally fit that make it through. We grew up in a very narcissistic society where it's me, 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 look at me, I've got an award, I participated, I'm the best, mommy and daddy always say how great I am, and blah, blah, blah. And now all of a sudden, it's not about self-esteem at all, because drill instructors don't care about self-esteem. Okay, self-esteem is telling you you're good even when you're not good. It's all about developing pride, and it's pride and accomplishment as a team. And so part of how they do that is we say, all right, everybody has to have their weapons disassembled and then reassembled. And guess what? If one person of the 80, 60, 50 people in your team don't get it done, everybody fails. And so there's this constant pressure to develop teamwork. So if you're out there on a march and somebody's falling behind, they twist their ankle or whatever, you help them out, you carry their gear so that everybody accomplishes it. Because in combat, there is no such thing as Rambo, the individual warrior who's taken out everybody by themselves. It just doesn't exist.
How much can you take that idea and implement it in life outside of the military?
The Marine Corps concept of leadership is unlike the real world, if you want to refer to it as such, as this pyramid where you have these leaders on top who are walking up that pyramid to stand on top, and everybody exists to make sure that they are successful. Absolutely not. Totally different concept. The concept is an inverted pyramid where the leaders actually see themselves as the bottom of the pyramid, and they're responsible for holding up and facilitating success of the team. And that's why if a unit fails, it's not the subordinates who failed, it's the leader that didn't set them up for success. Conversely, if the team succeeds, it's not the leader that made them successful. It was the team that did it. So I try to implement that concept in every organization I've been a part of, whether it be in the Marine Corps, in the private sector, with nonprofits.
How did you rise in position originally?
Shortly after I enlisted, I was selected for an officer commissioning program. And this is where it's much more challenging physically, exponentially harder than boot camp. Mentally, it's more challenging in that you're now being driven more by self-discipline as opposed to imposed discipline. It's run by the senior enlisted. So at the end of the day, when you graduate, you're going to be senior to the people that trained you. So you're going to be the officer on top of these guys. So these individuals are the ones that are going to be responsible for evaluating you, and they're training you. And if they don't feel that you're good enough to lead Marines, they don't have to accept you. So Officer Candidate School could theoretically graduate no one.
As a Marine Corps officer, Bull led Operation Just Cause down in the jungles of Panama, prepping for the takedown of Noriega. He was part of Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm to take out Iraqis who had invaded Kuwait. After being an instructor in San Diego and an accompanying commander in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, he decided to take a break to get his MBA at Harvard, where he was voted co-president of his class. While working at Goldman Sachs, he witnessed 9/11 on the news and decided to return to active duty. After fighting in Afghanistan, he moved to Iraq.
So wasn't long after that, I was right back on active duty. I was called over to Kuwait in preparation for going into Iraq. If you take a look at this, you might say, oh, that's kind of cool. You've got Darth Vader's helmet. This is actually, you can see a silhouette of Saddam Hussein and some Arabic writing. These were the actual helmets that were worn by Saddam's elite Republican Guard. They're almost comical in that these guys were less than effective. Let's put it this way. Our Marines took them down easily. We rolled them up because they were bullies. They were evil people that treated their own citizens worse than we did. And the public, when we came in there, were so grateful and they were so shocked because they were told that to become a United States Marine, you had to kill a family member. But the reality is that they were shocked because they were told we were going to rape, pillage, plunder, slaughter. We were coming in to kill everybody. And so when they realized we were coming in there to liberate them from this dictator, their whole mindset shifted. And the guidance given to the 1st Marine Division is no better friend, no worse enemy. And the concept being is if you want to fight us, you will be destroyed. However, if you are willing to understand that we're there to help you, no better friend. You know, we'll help rebuild your school, get your electricity up, bring you water, food. We'll try and protect you as best we can from the enemy. And I think that they were shocked, and we had a lot of support from the locals who were hugging us and embracing us and thanking us. And again, the people were watching us. And as I said, like there was one opportunity where I heard sort of a metal on metal sound, and I turned, drew my weapon, and was about to fire at somebody who was picking up an RPG off the ground. And fortunately, I withheld my fire, and instead, I screamed at this person who actually was a young kid, probably not more than 14 years old. And I just, told him, get the heck out of there. And interestingly, cursing in English actually is translatable pretty much across every culture. So it was effective in that the kid was terrified, dropped this weapon and ran away. But little things like that were indicators to the people who were watching from covered and concealed positions that the Marines were not there just as bloodthirsty killers to slaughter everybody, and that we really were true to our word. So to try and gain trust from the locals was to listen to them and to understand what their concerns were. And I think that they felt as though we let them down, especially when the military pulled out.
In 2003, David Bull Gurfein was photographed tearing down a poster of Saddam Hussein. This photograph became an iconic symbol of the war in Iraq. When Bull was in high school at Great Neck South, his school flag was the Confederate flag. When he learned that the Klansmen who had lynched a young black man were using the same flag, he started a petition and successfully replaced that flag with the Revolutionary Patriot symbol he designed himself. Even in high school, Bull was already starting to take a stand against symbols of hate. But here in Iraq, the stakes were a lot higher.
So while you were in Iraq, there was a photo taken of you, and it's become an iconic photograph from the war in Iraq, where you tear down a poster of President Saddam Hussein. Can you tell us a little bit about the moments leading up to that?
We had finished a lot of the prep of the battlefield, and as we were in there, we're interacting with a lot of the people. And so early after we had stabilized this one city in Safwan, a woman came out and she pulled back her abaya, and I had an interpreter with me, and she told this horrific story about how she had these children, these 7 children were all forced to go and fight against the Americans in the first Gulf War. And she had one child that she felt was too small and too young, and so she tried to hide that child. Of course, the Ba'athist officials found out. They killed the child, and then they hacked off her ears with a knife because they felt that way she'd be able to listen more clearly to what they had to say. And she pulled her abaya back and showed these horrific scars. And of course, you couldn't see the scars of her heart, having one of her children shot right in front of her. But this was sort of a common theme of terrorism and repression. For anybody who's read the book, 1984, the whole Big Brother concept, you had giant posters of Saddam all over the place. And so Big Brother was always watching, and you had informants. And it was a really horrible society. And this group of Iraqis, they started coming out slowly and telling more stories. And this other woman started telling this story as we're standing in front of this big poster of Saddam Hussein, that one day her small child, probably about 5 years old or so, was playing and threw some mud on this poster of Saddam Hussein. And of course, the Ba'athist official came out and said, who has defiled our great leader? And this woman came out, she was like, my son, he was playing, and then bang, shot the kid, 5-year-old child. And the blood stain was still on the cement at the base of this poster to make everybody realize that there will be zero tolerance of defiling posters of Saddam Hussein. So at that point, I had heard enough. So I told my Marines, I said, I want every one of these posters taken down. Every statue, any iconic image of Saddam Hussein, I want it taken down now. And they're like, hey, sir, I don't think it's a good idea to put our Marines up here, as targets for snipers this early on. I said, you're right. I said, so I'm going to do it. And so I took out my knife and I went up there and I started cutting. And my sergeant was like, hey, sir, you're going to get shot. I said, no, I'm not. You're going to make sure I don't. And he was like, oh, shoot. So I ended up going up and started cutting these posters down, and we went one after the other, and they were all over the place, and we started tearing them down. And not long after that, the media came in and they started taking photographs of me taking down these posters. And then what ended up happening was, on the one hand, international news was now picking up the story that United States Marines are being embraced by the Iraqi people, which all throughout the Arab world they were told, oh my God, the Americans are horrible for invading it, that the people are going to reject them. But here, the video and the imagery was totally different. The people were totally embracing us. But we went back to our headquarters, and everybody's like, oh wow, and they're cheering because they all saw us on the news and high-fiving us and everything. And this colonel, Bull, get the F in my office right now. And he dug into me and he was like, what in the F are you doing? Nobody told you to tear down any posters. You better turn in your weapons. You're a loose cannon. Get the hell out of country. But like, that was it. My career was done. Not that I cared about a career, but my time on the battlefield was done. And I was going to be leaving as a disgrace. Fortunately, so I've been told, one of the enlisted Marines realized what was going on. And he called up to one of his buddies and told the general to call back and get this colonel on the line. So as this colonel's chewing my butt, he's like, hey, Colonel, General's on the line for you. And the colonel gets on the line. Sir, yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. He's sitting right here in front of me. Yeah. Sir, everybody saw that news stuff. Everybody saw him tearing down the posters. And well, yes, sir. That was great initiative on his part. Yeah. Well, yes, sir. Yes, we will tell all United States Marine units in country to tear down posters and statues of Saddam Hussein. Very well, sir. Yeah. Oh, yes, sir. And we'll have Bull join you up on the front. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Have a great day. He turns to me and goes, you're the luckiest SOB I've ever known. Get the hell out of here. So that was like, no good deed goes unpunished.
That story seems like a larger version of the high school story in a way.
I guess
you're just like, you're ripping down the symbolic presence of evil or hatred or whatever it is. So
could very well be.
So you did some undercover work. Could you talk about that at all?
It was interesting. Right when I came from Afghanistan over to Kuwait and we were prepping for the battle there, and nobody had really taken the time to think through, how is this amazing 2-division combat unit with thousands of Marines going to cross out of Kuwait into Iraq? And the reason this was so challenging is that you had a series of barriers that was established inside the country of Kuwait, which included these big giant berms, these ditches. You had concertina wire, barbed wire. You had electrical fences across a 56-mile frontage that was several miles deep. So I was given the task to figure out how the heck are we going to get out of the country. And now you couldn't just get on the roads and go, because now you've got 2 divisions funneling into a road, one road going up into Kuwait, and all the Iraqis would have to do is bomb that one road. The other concept is you couldn't be slow, because if we were slowly taking apart various barriers and all the rest, again, you've now had everybody held up and could be bombed and destroyed before they even left the country. So across this 56-mile frontage, we had to figure out how to build these lanes that would go through these berms, fill in these ditches, cut down the wires, take down the electrical fences, and all the rest. So when they said go, boom, the Marines are flying. So all of this work, as we're prepping to cross this border, had to be done at night. There was a lot of work that we had to do in a more clandestine manner. So a lot of times I would go up there in civilian clothes as portraying an Australian contractor. And my job, with a really horrible, phony Australian accent, was to inspect the fences and just making sure the electricity's all working right here. And I probably sound like I was from Nottingham, but fortunately nobody freaking knew. And even if I was from Nottingham, even that wasn't good. So, I'd be out there 18 hours a day trying to figure this out. And fortunately we got away with it. And we were able to assess this whole situation and do a lot of clandestine work throughout the night. A lot of times, a lot of the contractors I had were Bangladeshi, and they were not military. They were just bulldozer operators that I had to have, driving out into the desert in the middle of the night, taking down obstacles. I had to interact with the Kuwaitis a lot and had to build a lot of trust with them. And all of a sudden we got the word about 36, 48 hours before we thought we were going to go. And I get the call like, hey, we're going now. And we hadn't prepared. There was still more work that was going to be done that day right up on the final front. So right out in broad daylight, we start taking down the final obstacles right in front of the Iraqis. And the Iraqis are looking at us like, what in the hell? So they start calling in artillery and mortars and everything right on top of us, heavy machine guns and all the rest. And all my bulldozer drivers, the Bangladeshis, they were like, we're out of here. We didn't sign up for this. So I went and ran these guys down. I grabbed one. I was like, hey, buddy, what's going on? Like, we're not playing here. It's like, hey, look, don't worry about it. Let's come on. We'll go together. So we went up on top of these bulldozers together. And, I sat in front of them. I had a bulletproof vest on. and let's go. And all of a sudden the rounds started coming around, hitting off around us. And Bangladeshi's like, what the hell was that? I was like, mosquitoes. He goes, mosquitoes? What? I was like, don't worry about it. It's good. Keep going. And we ended up taking down the final obstacles. And very next morning, boom, there were the Marines punching through. 7th Marines went deep, and they did a great job.
That's so cool. So, okay, you were in a movie alongside Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson called A Few Good Men. Can you tell people a little bit about the experience?
An opportunity came along when I was out in San Diego, and I was an anti-terrorism combat marksmanship instructor. And you have to understand, that was prior to 9/11. So there wasn't much terrorism going on, especially in San Diego. And I also had a lot of leave that I could take. So one of the people that worked in our finance department, a civilian, she saw a posting in one of the Hollywood magazines, I guess. It was saying, looking for people who look like Marines to be in a movie. And she sent this to me in the internal guard mail with a little note saying, like, here's your big chance. And of course, I immediately just threw it on a stack of papers and ignored it. Well, fortunately, a buddy of mine, Mark Murray, he comes over and he sees this document. He's like, yeah, casting calls are today. I think if we get in a car right now, we could probably still make it. I'm like, we're not going to make it. I said, look, I just qualified all these people with all these weapons. I got to enter all this information into the computer. And back then, entering information into a computer was like chiseling things out of stone. So I was like, look, there's just no way I'm going to get this done. He goes, knocks all of my paperwork all over the floor. He goes, you're right. Ain't no way you're going to get that done today. We better get up there to Culver City. I'm like, oh, man, I hate you. And he's just like, spontaneity. And he said spontaneity. Now, if he says spontaneity, you can't argue. So I was like, all right. Bottom line is, he ended up being the guy early on in the movie A Few Good Men who was the mean sergeant who Santiago was writing home about how mean this guy was. And then I ended up being in the courtroom for about 30 days or so, where my job was to be a military policeman in the courtroom. And eventually, when Jack Nicholson, goes to leave, I'm supposed to stop him, and then he goes to attack Tom Cruise, and I'm supposed to hold Jack back. But anyway, so that it was all true. I was actually in a movie with all these people, got a chance to meet them all. I actually did get into a confrontation with Tom Cruise that almost didn't end well, but fortunately it did. As we were about to do our confrontational scene, and Jack Nicholson was always joking around me like, hey, Bull, one of these times you should let me through on the little sucker. Because he didn't really like Cruise at times. Cruise kind of had an attitude that was bigger than his stature in physical stature and, his sort of pecking order in Hollywood. And Jack, was kind of the man. And so I guess there was a little bit of resentment there. And so Jack, really enjoyed going at Cruise and really was going at him hard. So right before we were doing one of these shots, the makeup guy's coming around trying to touch up all my zits. And I'm like, all right, dude, don't put too much makeup on me because I don't want people, thinking I'm a pretty boy like Tom. And Cruz standing right next to me, he turns to me and goes, what's that? And he was like pissed. And he got all on my face. Well, he's kind of short, so maybe in my chest. And so I was like, I just told the makeup guy not to put too much makeup on me because I don't want anybody confusing the two of us. And he goes, yeah, because then maybe you'd have to get like a real job and a real life. It was one of those things I was in such shock. Like, wait a second, you act for what? But I didn't even have a chance to say anything because Rob Reiner's like, okay, sound, lights, everybody, action. And so before I could even think, here comes Jack flying in at Cruz, and I go, nah. And I step back and boom, Jack knocks Cruz flat on his back, and it's just this big commotion. Jack gets up, he hits me like, bull, that was awesome. He thought that was hysterical. Cruz, not so much. He was furious. He jumped up. He goes, what the F are you doing? You got one other thing to do in this movie. You can't do it right. He's screaming at me, going off. He's yelling at this and that. And all of the people on the set, they appreciate it. I was asking him questions. He treated them with respect because some of the actors treated people like crap. Like Demi Moore and Kevin Bacon, great people, were really nice to everybody. They were just good people. Some people just didn't have time to deal with anybody. So now when all of a sudden Cruz is attacking me, all of a sudden all these people kind of form like this high school recess circle, and they're like, kick his ass, Marine! They're like all yelling, everybody's going crazy. They want me to beat up Tom Cruise. Like, what? Fortunately, it was crazy. Fortunately, quick goat thinking, I realized if I hit Cruise, I go to jail forever. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to get into a fight with Tom Cruise. That's the stupidest thing. So I'm like, all right, I'm out of here. So I start walking away. I'm like, this is stupid. The producers, meanwhile, they're sitting here like, if that Marine walks off the set, that means we've got to reshoot all these scenes with Jack Nicholson, and we're already paying him $250,000 a day. And we're going to pay him time and a half. Get that dumb Marine back here now. So they were like, all of a sudden, they're like, hey, Bull, buddy, what's going on? Like my best friends now. And meanwhile, Cruise's publicist must have been doing something like this. Like, I try really hard to make sure people don't realize who you really are. And I want everybody to love you. And right now, you've just yelled at an actual United States Marine who has combat experience, who served our country, and like, you got to fix this. Like, I'm assuming that's the conversation that went on, because Cruise then comes over. He goes, hey, hi, I'm Tom Cruise. I said, yeah, I know who you are. And I said, look, there's just no reason for you to be such a jerk. He's like, you're right. And here's the thing. There were plenty of other situations. Like, you yelled at that woman because she wanted an apple and she was taking it from the actor's fruit. Like, there was no reason for that. All she wanted was an apple. Yeah, you're right. And so it was kind of a weird thing. So he acted very conciliatory, very apologetic. And next thing you know, he and I end up becoming best friends. We go back, shoot the scene. I go out to his Winnebago, show him photographs of when I actually was in the first Gulf War. And like, he and Nicole Kidman and I are sitting around looking at pictures together. And so it ended on a very positive note.
Oh my gosh.
Now here's the other one with Demi Moore. Now, Demi Moore, she was, again, brilliant, amazing, super person. But one time, like, again, most of my job on the set was to like stand in a corner and be like a green blur. Well, whenever there was a break, all the people that were acting like Marines, they're like, oh, gee, they're like opening their collars, they're lounging around, like, oh my gosh, this stinks. But for me, I was an active duty Marine, so I'd keep my collar buttoned, I'd be sitting up straight or standing parade rest, military bearing the whole time. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye, Demi Moore and her hairdresser would be pointing over and laughing at me. So, of course, me not being one to just kind of be a shrinking wallflower, I decided to walk over. And I was like, excuse me, can I speak to you for a second? Demi Moore was like, what? No, you're coming over to talk to me? Like, who are you? I said, I noticed that whenever there's a break, you and your friend are like pointing at me and laughing. And I'm just curious, like, is there something I'm doing wrong? And she was like, she was totally embarrassed. And she was like, wow, that's so wrong of us. I apologize. We shouldn't be laughing like that. It's just, you actually look like a Marine. And I'm like, well, I actually am a Marine. She goes, well, that explains a lot. And so next thing you know, she starts telling me how her brother actually was serving on active duty in the Marine Corps while they were filming this movie. So when she's giving these like emotional responses about like, why do you like these Marines? And she's talking about they stand on the wall and they protect it. She's talking about her brother. And so, she would like come in, she's like, hey, my brother just wrote me this letter. He says he's getting his butt kicked. Wasn't that? Oh, he's having a great time. That's awesome. And so, of course, at the time she was dating Bruce Willis. That was his name. He came on the set. He got upset, apparently. He thought like he got jealous of me and I grabbed her away, told her she couldn't talk to me anymore, whatever. So he was all upset with me, I guess. Kevin Bacon, he used to ask me, he's like, hey, so Bull, what do you think? Do I look like a Marine? I was like, no. But what? What are you talking about? He was supposed to be this Marine defendant here. And I was like, no, your hair is too long. And, you're just kind of wishy-washy. And, when you're asking questions, your hands are like this. And, when you're making point, you point like that, you have to have all your fingers going out. You can't have one going out and three coming back, because that, that doesn't make sense. You want them all going out. You want to be directive in it. He's like, oh, wow, look at that. So next thing you know, everybody's walking around the set like, hey, look at that. Do that. Pointing with the whole hand. Like that was an amazing concept. Definitely appreciated, enjoyed that experience without a doubt.
What advice would you give to people who are interested in serving their country?
I can imagine nothing more fulfilling than serving others. My father left college early to serve as a United States Marine. My mother, as a teenager, served as a nurse. And again, the concept of noblesse oblige, those who have the ability have an obligation to help others. I'm not saying everybody should serve in the armed forces. I think that our country would be well served by 100% service of some sort. If you're an artist, great, go and enhance the beauty and the aesthetics of our environment. If you're wanting to be an engineer, there's things you can do to help society, as opposed to, again, look at me and I'm important and it's all about me. There's a lot of value in saying, how to help others. I would highly encourage those who are interested in service in the armed forces, and of course I'm biased, is to challenge yourself to the max. And if you're going to do it the best you can. Go be a United States Marine. Go serve in MARSOC and go be a raider. You've got people who serve in the Navy who are special operations, independent duty corpsmen. And these people are some of the most highly trained emergency medical technicians that you can imagine, that, they're saving people's lives on a battlefield. So life, this is not a test run. You get this one shot, at least as far as we know. So live it to the most. Whatever it is, go for it 100%. If you've got persistence and you've got a dream, you've got a goal, you'll accomplish it. If you do any research on the Stoic philosophers, their whole concept was that you could never be a victim except a victim to yourself. You can't control your environment. You can only choose how you are going to address what happens to you. You can ruin your own life, your whole life, if something horrible happens because you choose to ruin your life. Nobody's going to change it one way or the other. You've got to control that. In the Marine Corps, there's a saying, in a firefight, don't act like a pussy. You might live, which is an interesting concept, because some people are like, oh my God, I might die. Well, yeah, okay, you're in a firefight. Like, you join the Marines. Yeah, of course, that's always an option. But the concept is that for a warrior, there are things worse than death. And that how you would be perceived as courageous or someone who is a coward in combat carries a lot more weight with how you would live the rest of your life. And quite frankly, I think that that's a great way of looking at life, because there's something contagious about being courageous, and it allows you to do things you might not ordinarily do. Whereas fear limits you because you might fail. So what? Keep going. That's it. That's life.
That was an amazing speech. I'm like so inspired right now.
Go do it right now. And if you join the Marines, do not tell your parents that you saw this video.
So that was David Bull Gurfein. If you enjoyed this as much as I did, please subscribe to my channel to see more interviews with interesting people. Thanks for watching.